All right, students, well, welcome to this special double credit Monday chapel. We planned that for you. That's good. But one of the reasons we did that is because we are so excited to welcome you to this Hope Chapel. And for the next year and for the next few years, we're going to be looking at the science of hope, and particularly building in a partnership with the Lynn Institute in Oklahoma City and this Hope Initiative that was really spearheaded and launched and developed through the science of hope and the work done by Dr. Chan Hellman. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Chan Hellman to come on up and join me, grab his seat, get comfy, welcome him if you would. And as he's doing that, let me introduce you to Dr. Hellman. Dr. Hellman is a nationally recognized researcher, author, and speaker. And he also is a professor of social work at the Ann and Henry Zero School of Social Work. He's also the founding director of the Hope Research Center at the University of Oklahoma. So welcome to a Sooner here in Bison Country. Wow, that was a pretty chilly reception.
Pretty harsh.
Yeah, it's kind of harsh. He's written numerous scientific publications and presented at national and international conferences. What does Dr. Hellman do? Well, his research is focused on the science of hope. And I can't tell you, students and community members, you need to hear me on this. This is vital for, I think, your future. It's been extraordinarily helpful for me, and it's going to be helpful for our entire community. And the science of hope is a psychological strength. That research is propelling the integration of science of hope across Oklahoma, the United States, and internationally. What makes this work so significant is what we're about to talk about. Is this is informed in part by your personal journey.
That's right.
This is we're going to hear a little bit more about Dr. Hellman's story and then how that impacts this science of hope. But let me just share with you, as a lifelong Oklahoman, Dr. Hellman knows firsthand how one person sharing hope can change the trajectory of one person's life. And today he's here to share that journey of hope with us and talk a little bit more about the science of hope and what that could mean for a place like OBU. And so as we've discovered in chapel is oftentimes music and a speaker. But one of the things you need to know about chapel is meaningful encounters with Christ and then growth in Christ. That's what our goal is, to have meaningful encounters and then grow. And part of that growth is understanding very practically what it means to navigate the world well. And that's really what we're talking about. So, Dr. Hellman, first of all, welcome back to OBU. It's great to have you here. And what I'd like to do is, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your story. In your book, Hope Rising, one of the things you talk about is kind of growing up. It was an unbelievable story. I mean, it was hard to read, just to be honest. But just by way of context, I mean, your dad took you on some drug deals. And that's, I haven't done that with my son, right? So that's a bit of a challenge. So tell us a little bit about your story. You grew up here in Oklahoma. So tell us about your story, and then we'll talk about some turning points in your life. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Great. Well, first of all, two things. One, the morning worship service, Hope is Alive, right? Good job on that. That was very inspiring. And then probably almost as important, double credit.
Double credit, huge.
Double credit.
Huge.
So hope is truly alive. Right. So thank you for allowing me to be here and to talk to the students and to you and to be part of this journey. As you mentioned, getting to go on, and I say that, getting to go on drug deals with my father at the age of 5 is some of those early memories. And when I say getting to go on those drug deals, it came from a place of I got to spend some time with my dad, and as a child who wants to do those kinds of things, going on a drug deal was that pathway. And what I later realized and learned was part of my getting to go with my father was really very intentional on his part because the idea was if a small child is with you, there's less likely to be violence when things don't go quite according to plan. And didn't really write about that too much in the book, but that is obviously not true. So got to experience quite a few things there. My earliest job was to help harvest marijuana, learn to roll a joint. I can't believe I'm saying that here in chapel.
It's just gotten raw and real.
Yeah, but I got really, really good at that through kindergarten and on and on and on. As my father really transitioned into harder things and then ultimately left the family, at about the 8th grade, so I've just fast forwarded quite a bit, at about the 8th grade, I went ahead and made the decision to transition into homelessness. And so from 8th grade throughout 12th grade through graduation, I was a homeless youth. A good part of that was by choice, just because being homeless was safer for me in that context. I did do a lot of couch surfing. I will tell you that you all probably won't remember this, given how young you all are. Gosh, I feel so old. But I used to go around and steal. You remember those old Coke bottles you could sell back for like 5 cents or whatever? So one of the things that I became really good at was finding those in the neighborhood, and then that's how I would eat. I'd get a frozen pizza and eat. The one meal that I knew that I would get was at school. School was my safe place. High school was the one place that I knew I could get a meal, as I said. I would go to school early so that I could take a shower. And it was a place that I was going to be safe for a period of time. And there was a particular spot on top of the school that I spent many nights. That's where I would sleep. And I assume that my name is still painted in that kind of part of the school. So hopefully this isn't being recorded. Then as I graduated high school, which was amazing as I look back, and that one individual who changed everything for me. And I'll lean into this for a moment and see kind of where. Sure. Really, it was really that 8th grade transitioning into homelessness that times for me became very, very dark. Because I realized kind of where I was in life.
And that had to be extraordinarily, you had to be fearful, anxious. I mean, what were the sources of that anxiety and fear? Could you isolate some of those?
Yeah, so anxiety and fear that people would find out. Right before transitioning into homeless, going to bed every night with a game plan of when the sheriff's department was going to kick in the door. How was I going to hide? How was I going to escape? And then and I didn't write this in the book, but, as my father left and other individuals, other men came into the picture, being safe was a daily journey. For me. And I was very angry, so, I'd provoke some of that.
Sure.
And
so then once you moved to homelessness, a different set of fear and anxiety. Yeah.
So really, it came from a framework of really coming to the conclusion that I probably wouldn't live past the age of 25. I mean, that's kind of what I set I'll probably die by then, And so, fear and anxiety associated with eating, with being able to take care of my hygiene. I was a class clown. Trauma shows up in many different ways. For me, it was to be the class clown as opposed to really acting out. And then I just remember making a decision. For me, it was making the decision that I was going to escape the pain and the anxiety. And I set a date for which I was going to end the pain. And I had a pathway to do that. I had a pathway to do that. And I was in school, I was in the gym, and I was sitting in the bleachers, and the day was there.
Was this in high school?
This was 8th grade.
8th grade.
Yeah. And as I'm sitting in the kind of bleachers area, my 8th grade science teacher, he was also the basketball coach. He knew something was up with me, but he didn't know the story. He didn't know what was going on. But he came up and he just sat with me. And, he sat real close and he leaned in and I'm just in despair. I mean, I'm in a really dark space. And he doesn't say anything for about 3 minutes. And finally, he gets really, really close and he said, "Chan, everything's going to be okay." And he gets up and leaves. And so when the date came and I was in the planned space and had the weapon, as I was about to, do something horrible, his voice showed up. "Chan, you're going to be okay." And that I just stopped. And that's the reason I'm alive today.
That's incredible. One person's influence on
One person.
a young 8th grade.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, everyone's story is unique, right? But suffering is universal. Everybody suffers in different ways. But isn't it true? Talk to us a little bit more about the power of that one person being a pathway for you.
Yeah, and I think this is why, for me, faith has become such an important part of my own sort of journey with hope. And what I heard in the "Chan, you're going to be okay" is you're worthy of love. You're worthy of somebody's attention and intention. And you're worthy of a future.
Wow.
And again, I think that this is why, personally, for me, faith is such an important part of my own journey with hope, because I listen to the worship songs, I listen to the teachings, and what I hear is we're children of God, and we're worthy of the future that's offered to us. Yeah. And so, to be honest with you, that's what I study.
Wow. And that's powerful. So that phrase and those words not only sustained you from 8th grade through that dark day, but that sustained you through high school. Yes. And then kind of, did that launch you into college, or kind of tell us that story? Yeah,
so going to college was sort of a spur of the moment decision. So when I graduated high school, the last day of school, the principal, in a big auditorium much like this, and I was sitting right over there, the principal invited a few of the seniors to get up, come up and make the announcement of what our goals for the future were. And this is the part that I think I'd like for everybody to really hear, and he called my name. I was one of the individuals that came up. Now, I had spent my entire high school every day setting goals for that day. I didn't realize it then. I recognize it now. What am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? How am I going to stay safe? Those were my goals, and my goals were day to day. And when the principal invited me to come up on stage, I realized that I had to think about the future beyond today. And I hadn't done that in a long time. So I realized, well, I could work on a farm, I could join the military, I could go to college. And when the microphone comes to me, it's, well, I'm going to college. I won't tell you where. Northwestern Oklahoma State University.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
Ride Ranger ride. But I went to college not to get a college degree. I went to college because I wanted to avoid the other options. I'm obviously a first-generation college student. Financial aid had no meaning to me. I didn't even know what that was. The academic counselors, counseling and advisement, student success, all of the resources that are available for students, I had no idea what that was. Going to class just wasn't even part of the pathway. My first semester grade point average, and I say this with a little bit of humility. My first semester grade point average in college was a 0.56.
Yeah, you kind of have to work for that, don't you?
I got a B in advanced swimming and life saving. And then of course the university invited me to step away for a while, and to figure that out. But in 8th grade, it was that teacher. In college, when I came back, it was one of my psychology professors. And it's very much the same story.
Really?
Yeah.
But a teacher making an impact on your life.
A teacher making all the difference of what could be.
And so do you think that's one of the reasons why you pursued the path that you did?
I do. When I finally came back to college, and by the way, when the university invited me to step away, I was 18 years old. I got married. I had a child. I was 18. My wife was 16. We just this year celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
So thank you. And I'm very proud of that, and married the love of my life, in that regard. But it was a professor who just expressed a little bit of kindness in the classroom, and so I started going in and learning more, and I just really developed a connection with him, but also the profession.
And so that kind of helps open up this trajectory on psych and social work and your emphasis on hope. So let's talk a little bit more about hope.
Good.
Talk to us about the science of hope, and there are 3 crucial elements that you identify with this science of hope. And so kind of unpack that a little bit for us. Why is hope vital for you and kind of your research program?
Sure. So hope is the belief that the future will be better than today. It's this idea of a future expectation. Now, embedded in that are 3 simple ideas: goals, the goals that we have for the future, and then our ability to identify the pathways or the roadmaps that we're going to use to pursue those goals. And then the willpower piece, which is really that motivational force that we're going to use to navigate those pathways. So that is the definition of hope. Now, I've been interested in 3 things. What is hope and why does it matter? How does adversity rob us of hope? And then more importantly, and because of my own personal story, is how do we nurture and restore hope? How is it that, given all of my adversity and experience and all of that, how is it that I'm able to sit on the stage with you today? And for me, that journey and this idea of hope gave me meaning and purpose. So, every single publication and research study is based upon very personal experiences. Yeah.
And so and students, I need you all to hear this, especially our community members. Those 3 elements are powerful, aren't they? The goals, the pathway, a discernible pathway towards hope, but also that willpower piece. So, I think goals, we conceptualize, okay, I understand that, but they have to be achievable goals. They have to be realistic, not pie in the sky. And then the pathway piece. So can you break those apart a little bit more, and then talk to us a little bit more about that willpower, that kind of stick-to-itiveness?
Sure. Yeah, so when we think about goals, and just if each of you would take just a second and just think about what maybe a goal would come to mind for you. What we've learned in the research is that there are really two types of goals that we set. One goal is an achievement goal. That is, we're working towards achieving some aspect. But and what we've learned is that when we're experiencing adversity, we're much more likely to set avoidant goals. So we begin to set goals of things that we don't want to occur. And that mindset is so important to understand about that pathways piece. Now, pathways is really that the strategy that I'm going to use to pursue that goal. But part of that is breaking it down into smaller benchmarks. So in order to achieve a degree at OBU, what has to happen, right? And so I start to put that into sequential components. Earlier you asked about why is hope important. One of the 2,000 published research studies, one of the single best predictors of your well-being. We know that. We know it is a predictor of well-being for children, adolescents, adults, and families. But in the university setting, what we found very consistently, I say we collectively in the research, is that your hope scores are a better predictor of your performance at OBU than the ACT, SAT, or high school GPA. Whoa. It outperforms all the standardized testing. Wow. And so it's powerful. It's powerful.
And so because of this, one of the things students that we're looking at is making sure that you are surveyed so that we can get your hope score, see where you are, and then project forward, okay, this is where we maybe want to go, or this will give us ideas about strategizing, thinking ways forward. Mm-hmm. But talk to us about, and that's interesting, that the achievement-based, right, and then the avoidance-based. Yes. Yeah. So if I were to put this on on a Monday morning, would an avoidance-based thing, I don't want to miss class, right? So my goal would be what? I don't want to miss class, therefore I'm going to set my alarm early, but it's more fundamental than that, isn't it?
Sure. So one way to think about this is imagine a basketball player who steps out on the court. And the basketball player's mindset is, I want to get the ball, shoot the winning shot for the team. That's an achievement mindset, because that end goal is achieving something for the team, achieving something for myself. But if that same basketball player steps out on the court and the mindset is, I hope they don't throw me the ball because I'll probably lose it and disappoint my team. So think about how that basketball player acts on the court. The achievement-oriented is doing everything they can do to find ways to achieve that goal. Whereas the avoidant framework, I'm doing everything I can to stay away from the ball, to not get open. And so it's all about, to not fail an exam versus to achieve a college degree. So for me, going to college was not about achieving a college degree. It was about avoiding all the other options. So going to class, studying for an exam, joining a study group, all of which are pathways, had no meaning for me, because I was trying to avoid working at a farm, joining the military. I was really just kicking the can down the road. And we tend to be much more short-term focused.
And so talk to us about willpower. That's an interesting concept in the science of hope. What do we mean by willpower, and how does that manifest itself in our kind of fulfillment of hope, or
Sure.
getting in that pathway?
Yeah, so willpower is really the motivational piece, but if you think about your willpower in the framework of where do you spend your mental energy, where do you focus your attention, and more importantly, where do you focus your intention? And so it's really where and how can you focus on those pathway pursuits. And so what are our sources of that willpower? This is where we argue that things like hope is a social gift again, which is about our connectedness with each other, our connectedness with others can become that source. But as we begin to work with organizations and even thinking about, student success opportunities, it's really grounded in the idea that hope begets hope. Hope begets hope. That is, if we've got an assignment, that is, let's see, we're in October, so I'm thinking end of semester, so we've got the big project in early December. Do I wait until December to start working on that? Or can I break the assignment into these smaller increments, these weekly increments? I don't focus on the big project. What I focus on is I need to identify some sources this week. I need to identify my thesis statement this week. And so that's what I'm going to focus on.
And so as you fulfill those kind of, that objective, that goal, you meet that goal, then that begets greater momentum.
Exactly.
To fulfill the next goal,
Right.
or meet that next goal. So that's the hope begets hope, and we can encourage one another in that.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
And that's huge. It is kind of the proverbial how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. Yeah. But you need to know kind of which bite to take first, second, third, and we're all doing it together. So that's
right.
good. So let's talk about the signs of hope, how this could play out at a university campus. We were talking earlier about how a lot of organizations have been using the signs of hope, state institutions, university campuses like OBU are picking up this hope initiative. So how does this manifest itself, and why does it matter for a campus like OBU?
Sure. So one of the things that we've really been working on in the research and other aspects is really how do we create a hope-centered university, for instance, a hope-centered OBU, which really starts by sharing the language of hope, whether at the upper administrative, the faculty, staff, so that everybody begins to understand that hope is about goals, pathways, willpower. It's not a wish. And more importantly, that everybody has a role to play in it. So, for instance, if I go to student counseling, for instance, as I make a decision that I need some service, right? There's a future expectation there. As I begin to navigate towards that office or towards that space, my hope, we have to recognize that my hope is activated and that I see that student counseling is a potential pathway. Now, notice I say potential. Because as I start to open the door, what we need to start thinking about is the environment that I'm about to walk into, does it nurture hope or does it rob hope? What does that environment look like? And so it's really about being very intentional about using the science of hope through all of the processes and procedures. But hope is not the outcome. Hope is not the outcome. Student well-being, student success, staff well-being, staff success, our ability to live life well, that's the goal.
Yeah, and that's really encouraging because we want a healthy, productive, not just healthy, but whole kind of community. I think that's, forgive me, I'm an Old Testament professor by training, so I have this biblical word, shalom, which is fecundity, wholeness. It's being whole as not just an individual, but a community. Mm-hmm. Everyone is seen. Everyone has a place. Everyone is thriving before God. And I mean, I think as the president of this institution and thinking about these students and our employee base, our community, I want us to embody shalom. I want us to have, and I think hope could be a powerful pathway towards that.
Very nice, very nice. I like that. And really, when we think about hope and the role of or the experience and the opportunity of a student is so much more than getting that college degree, right? The friendships and the connections, lifelong friendships and connections, but also your growth in so many other areas. And, the magic happens outside the classroom.
And it is a community that nurtures hope, and that's really where we're going with this Hope Initiative, this hope-centered university. We want to nurture hope within one another so that we experience that shalom. So practically speaking, I'm looking at our time, and we've got about 5 minutes. And so if you were looking out at these students, giving them a word about why hope matters to them, particularly your willpower, the pathways, your clear goals, nurturing hope with one another so that we experience that whole community, what would you say to them? You got about 5 minutes. Go.
Okay, no pressure. So I would say a couple of things. First is I've already said a couple like hope begets hope. But one of the first things that I think I would really lean into is really this idea that your imagination is the instrument of your own hope. And the ability to begin to imagine what that future is that you desire, that your experience at OBU, getting the degree, making these important connections, these are all just pathways to something greater, And so what is that future? Can you imagine what that future looks like? And more importantly, can you see yourself in it? So imagination as the instrument of hope, I think, is really important. So what it helps us do is begin to be much more intentional about thinking about goals. And oftentimes we talk about goals and, we'll say, well, what are your goals for the future? It's like, well, I want to be a professor. Okay. But what we really don't know is what's driving that, what's behind all of that. So we have to be much more intentional about those goals. And I'll be honest, just my own personal experience, but also what the research is very, very clear on. Hope is a social gift. I know I've mentioned that, but your ability to connect with each other, your ability to connect with your faculty, the social experience is just so critical.
Yeah, and I so appreciate, especially coming out of the COVID pandemic, God willing, we're coming out of it. There is such a kind of disassociation one from the other, and we've got to reconnect somehow and work together and walk together. And I like to say this, that, we're Bison, but if you see someone walking by themselves, go make not in a creepy way, right? But make a connection with them. Say hello, introduce your why, because Bison don't walk alone. The worst thing that we can see on campus is another one in our community that's not seen, that's not recognized as a human being of infinite worth, created of God, by God, for connection. We're made for connection. So that social gift, I love that. That's powerful. All right, you get the last word. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with this community today?
The power of hope to me is in the shared language of goals, pathways, and willpower. And once you embrace that, I think one of the things, and this is something special I think about OBU, as I was listening to the worship, looking at this beautiful facility, some of the brief conversations that we've had, is I think we have to recognize that there is something special that is helping us identify the goals that we set. And so I think what I would say is, and this is for me, kind of where I am right now in my own journey, is that my personal faith and my belief in Christ, my belief in community, are those things that help guide me in thinking about the goals that I set. And more importantly, out of all of the potential pathways that are available, my faith in my community, my faith in God, help me choose those pathways that are righteous. And then more importantly, serves as that source of willpower so that I can endure during those times of adversity. So find that connection.
Wow, that's great. Everyone, Dr. Chan Hellman, let's thank him for being good. All right, everyone, so let's start using that language. You'll be, throughout the next 2 or 3 years, you'll be getting more information on the science of hope and some surveys and some other things. We're excited about this. We're grateful for the opportunity to partner with the Lynn Institute, and I'm grateful for you. So if I could just close us this morning just by saying, and I said this to a group of students last night in Fairview, Oklahoma. If you don't know where that is, maybe is there anybody in this room from Fairview, Oklahoma? It's about 50 miles, I think, west of Enid. But I said this to them last night, and I want to say it to you. Don't let the voices from the outside set limiters on what God wants to do in and through your life. God has something beautiful for you. Maybe you can't see it, but echoing what Dr. Hellman said, the more that you get to know the Lord, the more that you come into a relationship with Christ, He opens our eyes so that we can see the future that we can't see, have the vision that we need for our lives. And then the beautiful thing is there's no kind of necessary divorce between science and faith. We can use tools like the signs of hope to give us very clear pathways to God's future for our lives, okay? Thank you so much for being here. Double credit, you know it. You are dismissed.